Hey everybody. So I want to talk about some trade rumors here going around the NHL because there's still, I think, a lot of moves that need to be made between now and the start of the season. So I particularly want to talk about some teams that are in really tough salary cap situations, have RFAs that they need to re-sign that are either they don't have the money freed up right now to sign these players, and they are in positions where they need to make moves. These are teams that keep coming up over and over again, and these are players from those teams that I keep hearing over and over again in trade rumors from around the league, online, Twitter, Facebook, just hearing everything that people talking about the NHL. Trades, potential moves, these teams keep coming up, and these are the players that keep coming up. So first, I want to start with the New York Rangers. So the New York Rangers right now have just over $1 million in cap space. They were over the cap until they bought out Kevin Shattenkirk. That move got them back under the cap. However, they still have Brendan Lemieux and Anthony DeAngelo as RFAs. And they only have $1 million in cap space, which is not nearly enough. They're a team that probably, even though technically they're under the cap right now, is going to have to make a move here at some point. And with the Rangers, the same player who's been talked about in trades for a number of years now is Chris Kreider. He is the guy that everyone is talking about. You look at this team, Mika Zibanejad, he's not going anywhere. He is their number one center. Artemi Panarin just signed the massive deal with them. And outside of that, it's a lot of younger players and guys that I really don't think the Rangers necessarily want to move on from. When you look at this roster, there's a clear person with trade value that stands out, that is a movable player, and that is Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider, 28 years old, making under $5 million a year at $4.625 million per year, headed into the last year of his contract. Now, the problem with Kreider is he has a modified no-trade clause, which means he has an 11-team no-trade list. So Kreider does have a little bit of a say in where he goes. He can, you can't just dump him off on a lousy team. He can veto the trade. However, he's a guy who can score 20-plus goals in a season, be a really valuable top six goal scorer. And, I think there's a lot of value for Chris Kreider on the market for a team that's looking to add speed and goal scoring. So when you're just looking at the Rangers forward group, if there's anybody that's going to go, anyone that's going to be traded, Chris Kreider to me is the one that stands out because he has the most trade value outside of Panarin and Zibanejad, who I think are absolutely not going anywhere, obviously. So I would think that if anyone's going to get moved by the Rangers, it would be Chris Kreider. I don't know exactly what they would get for him, especially since he only has 1 year left on his contract. But for the Rangers, it's definitely I would think that they're going to make a move in some way to try and free up a little more cap space, because they're assuming they re-sign Lemieux and DeAngelo, they're going to be back over the cap, so they have to do something. Next up is the Calgary Flames. Now, the big thing with the Calgary Flames is that Matthew Tkachuk is still not signed. Tkachuk had a breakout season last year, an absolutely spectacular year, and at 21 years old, as a high offense goal-scoring power forward, he is going to want a lot of money and a big contract to lock him up long-term. Flames have $7.7 million in cap space right now, which seems like a decent amount, but Matthew Tkachuk is going to require at least that, if not more. So they're a team that also needs to do something to clear up some space. And two names that keep coming up with the Calgary Flames are Michael Frolik and TJ Brody. So Michael Frolik, headed into similar as Chris Kreider, headed into the last year of his contract. he does have a modified no-trade clause as well. He has a 10-team no-trade list. So, again, he's in a little bit of control as far as where he goes. But he's 31 years old, making $4.3 million this year. Really versatile winger, goal scorer, who kind of a middle of the lineup guy. He's not somebody you're going to have on your first line, but he could play second or third line as a goal scorer and give you some solid secondary scoring for sure. Still a decent player, and really, has played pretty well over the last few years. So Frolik is a guy that I think a team looking for goal scoring could absolutely make a move for. And the Flames absolutely need to give up, loot. They need to dump some cap, and the Flames, honestly, offensively, have a lot of really good players. Obviously, their first line is outstanding. They've really got some talent in there in Calgary, which is why they were so good last season. I think Frolik's a little bit expendable, and going into the last year of his deal, he's a guy that I don't think the Flames necessarily need to hold on to, so it would make sense to move. Another player it would make sense to move is TJ Brodie. TJ Brodie is making $4.65 million, also the last year of his contract. Certainly probably not coming back after this year, so it would make sense to trade him. He has a modified no-trade clause as well. God, it seems like all these players have some form of no-trade clause, at least a modified one, if not a full no-trade clause. Brodie can submit an 8-team no-trade list, so he doesn't have as much control, but still has 8 teams that he cannot go to if he doesn't want to. But again, now if I'm the Flames personally, and I'm trying to contend for the Western Conference next year, and I'm trying to win the division again, I am not getting rid of TJ Brodie. I would much rather get rid of Michael Frolik. He's a little bit more replaceable. You can put someone else on the third line wing, and they'll be okay. TJ Brodie plays a big role in this team's top 4, and they really don't have a lot of defensive depth. That's something that the Flames have really lost because of the salary cap situation they're in, is defensive depth. Their top 4 is Mark Giordano, Noah Hannafin, TJ Brodie, and Travis Hamonic. Really good top 4. After that, you have Juuso Valimaki, who's only 20 years old, but a really good young player. Rasmus Andersson, who's really grown into a solid defenseman, and I think it could possibly move up into a top 4 role. But after him, you're down to Oliver Killington, who I've never personally seen play. And after that, you're into minor league guys. So, depth is an issue there where right now they have a very good top 4, and they could be in good shape even moving Brodie top 4-wise, but then you really don't have anyone after that. And that would mean a bottom pair that really leaves a lot to be desired, and it would certainly lead to, if you ever got into injury trouble where you have 1 or 2 top 4 defensemen out of the lineup, I mean, you're going to have AHL guys playing big minutes at the NHL level, and you don't really want that. So I would not move Brodie right now if I were the Flames, assuming that they're trying to be, a potential Stanley Cup contender this year. I just don't think they have the defensive depth to move him. Frolik is a guy that I think that they should focus on possibly getting rid of, and that would open up another $4.3 million in cap space. So the next team I want to talk about are the Tampa Bay Lightning, because Tampa Bay, while it seems like they have a lot of cap space right now with $9.3 million, Braden Point is still not signed, and that is an issue. Braden Point is going to garner at least $9 million per year to re-sign, I would think, given that he is potentially a 100-point player this season. He's going to take up all or even more cap space than what Tampa Bay has right now. So they're going to have to move on from somebody. They've already lost a lot out of their defense. They let Dan Girardi and Anton Strawman leave this offseason. They brought in Kevin Shattenkirk on a pretty cheap deal to fill out that top 4 defense. And so it wouldn't, completely be ripped apart. And then the rest of those guys are on pretty cheap deals. So, really wouldn't make much sense to move a guy like Coburn or Ruda or anyone else on that defense because they're all on really cheap deals. It wouldn't open up a meaningful amount of cap space. So for Tampa Bay to move somebody, it's going to have to be a forward. And I feel like we've been talking about the same three forwards as far as Tampa Bay trade rumors for the last few years. Andre Palat, Tyler Johnson, and Alex Killorn. Those are the three guys that I would think would be getting moved. One of them, at least one of them, probably only one of them at this point. That would at least open up enough money to sign Point and probably add in Adam Ernie as well, get them re-signed for this coming season if you move one of those three players, Palat, Johnson, or Killorn. The problem is all three of those players have no trade clauses, full no trade clauses in their contracts, which means if they don't want to be traded, they can just say no. But still, for the amount of money that needs to be moved, Andre Palat is making $5.3 million for 3 more seasons. Tyler Johnson is making $5 million for 5 more seasons. And Alex Killorn is making $4.45 million for 4 more seasons. So that's a significant amount of money. If you just trade one of those guys, that opens up a significant amount of money for Tampa Bay. So I still think for the Tampa to make this all work and get Braden Point re-signed, they're going to have to make another move. They already traded away JT Miller to Vancouver. He did not have a no-trade clause, so he was the easiest one to move. I do think they need to dump another forward before this season starts if they want to get Braden Point back in a Tampa Bay Lightning uniform. And honestly, it would make sense to me to trade Tyler Johnson. Braden Point has absolutely taken over as the second-line center. The Johnson at this point, you don't really need him. Stamkos is your number 1, Point is your number 2, Cirelli's your number 3, and the pain in the ass, Cedric Paquette. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. He's one of the biggest pests in the league. But yeah, Cedric Paquette is your 4th-line center. You are very good down the middle without Tyler Johnson. You're good on the wings. I mean, there is an abundance of talent in Tampa Bay. At forward, one of these guys, losing one of these guys up front is not going to be the end of the world. So to me, Johnson makes the most sense just because they really don't need him anymore. But even Killorn or Palat, any of those guys can be moved on from, and there's enough talent there to replace him, and just, someone else will step up in the lineup and have a good season, I'm sure. I mean, there's just so much talent there in Tampa. But those are the three that I would think would be getting looked at as, those are the three with big enough contracts that it would be a significant help to Tampa's cap situation if they got moved. And finally, the last team I want to talk about, which I just really don't know what's going on. I don't know who's left for them to move. I don't know how any of this is going to work out for them, is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto right now is almost $3 million over the salary cap for this coming season, and Mitch Marner is still not re-signed. The big news that just came out was that Mitch Marner reportedly is asking for a 3-year bridge deal at $10 million per season. A $10 million bridge deal per year. That is just absolutely insane in my mind. But that's what Marner's asking for, and it's going to cost even more than that to lock him up long term. The problem is, no Mitch Marner, and the Maple Leafs are already well over the salary cap, and they've already traded away most of the players, pretty much all of the players that were the obvious choices to be traded this offseason. Nazem Kadri traded, Patrick Marleau traded, Nikita Zaitsev traded, Connor Brown traded. The guys that we knew going into the offseason were likely to get moved have all been moved. Toronto has made a ton of trades already. They've made a ton of moves already. They used the space that they freed up with those moves not to re-sign Mitch Marner, but to fix their defense. They brought in Cody Ceci. They brought in Tyson Barrie. They brought in Ben Harper. They used that money not to sign Marner, but to fix their defense, which they desperately needed to do. However, now we're getting close to the start of the season. Marner's still not re-signed, and Toronto is in absolutely no way, shape, or form has even close to the money to sign Marner. So I have no idea what they do from here, if they trade Marner's rights, if they just don't sign him and he sits out, or what happens. I don't know who's left for them to trade. There's absolutely no possible way in my mind that they could possibly re-sign Mitch Marner without moving William Nylander's contract first. So I absolutely think Nylander would have to go for it even to be a remote possibility of signing Marner. That would free up almost $7 million in space, but still that might not be enough given that they're already over the cap, so that they would need to make moves on top of that. It's just, to me, I look at Toronto and it's absolute salary cap hell in Toronto right now. It's a disaster. And I don't know what Dubas is doing. I don't know what what the long-term plan is there. I see no way that Mitch Marner can go back to Toronto at this point without something just completely ridiculous happening. They just don't have the money. They don't. So I don't even know where to begin with the Maple Leafs, but they're over the cap right now. They've got moves to make still. So those are the trade rumors, the teams, New York, Calgary, Tampa Bay, Toronto, the teams that have really been talked about a lot as far as trades. I think they all need to make some sort of move before the start of the season. They all have RFAs that they need to re-sign, many of them important RFAs. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens between now and the beginning of the season with those teams and with other teams as well. I still think there's going to be a lot of movement, a lot of trade talks, and a lot of things going on. But with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. We are on our road to 1,000 subscribers, so please help us get there if you can. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.